Hi, I'm glad you've come to Sunday school today. We're having a celebration, so I was just getting things ready. I've got my sweeties, I've got some decorations, I've got some biscuits, and I've got my cake, because every celebration needs a cake. Now we're celebrating because today in our story, the Jews are getting to return to their homeland. Remember when Nebuchadnezzar captured them and took them away to Babylon? The prophet Jeremiah had given them a promise from God that they would return to their homeland in 70 years' time. Well, that's where we're at now. Nebuchadnezzar's gone. There's a new king called Cyrus. Now, some of the history books sometimes call him Cyrus the Great because it seems like he was quite a fair ruler, and the Bible tells us why. We learn in Ezra chapter 1 that God worked in Cyrus's heart and he made a decree that all God's people could return to their homeland and rebuild God's temple. You'll remember when Nebuchadnezzar had taken them away, he'd also gone round and he destroyed the city, he'd knocked down all the walls, destroyed the houses, and he had destroyed the temple and destroyed a cake. Don't worry, I think we can fix this. Clean up a bit. We can put. Wait, I can use these. I can stick these on, make it look. Oh, it'll look okay. It won't look as good as it did, but it'll be tasty anyway. This is actually a bit like what happened. When Cyrus sent the people back, he told the Babylonian people to give them gold and silver, and they took back all the things that had been stolen from the temple 70 years before. So when they got back, they got to work. They rebuilt the altar and they had an offering to God, and then they started work on the foundations. Like when the foundations went down, they had a big celebration when they just started. And there was singing and cheering and dancing, and there was wailing and weeping. The old men who could remember the old temple that had been built by Solomon, they were very sad because they didn't think this new temple was going to look anything like the old temple. The old temple Solomon had made had been covered in gold and it was beautiful, and these men were sad. So their weeping and wailing joined in with the singing and dancing, and the celebration could be heard from miles away. Now at that time, we learn that Haggai was sent, another prophet from God was sent, and he told the people that even though they might be sad that the new temple wouldn't maybe be as wonderful as the Solomon's temple, it would be filled with an even greater glory. And we learn that that greater glory is when Jesus came. God came to earth as a man, and Jesus himself walked in the grounds of that temple that they were building at that time. It was years later, so the old men didn't know, but they were given the promise that it would be a greater temple. By Jesus coming, he actually introduced an even greater temple than that building, a beautiful, perfect one, because it is actually a living temple made up of all God's people who have been made pure and holy by having their sins forgiven through Jesus on the cross. God's people are those ones who've been forgiven and they've asked Jesus to live in their hearts. So it's a living temple, and it's even greater than a building of a temple. It's a bit like if we take away this temple, this cake that I'm trying to rebuild, and we get perfect cake made by a master baker, which just looks wonderful. It's a bit like that. This new temple is even more glorious. This living temple that we have is more glorious than any building and more glorious than any cake. So although we're celebrating today because God kept his promise to bring his people back from exile, back to their homeland and back to the temple, we can also celebrate because we no longer need a temple building since we have Jesus living in our hearts, which is much better. And it's a much more beautiful thing than the most amazing temple building. Now today's challenge is on a video from Jane. She's set us a challenge to build our own model of the temple. She's shown us one way to do it. She also says you could build it out of Lego, or you could build it out of Play-Doh. You could even, if you're one of these people with a master baker in their house, you could build it out of cake. You can take a video, you can take a photo, and you can send us in your models of the temple, whatever way you want to build it. And we'll put them together because we're doing more about the temple next week in our lesson. We've also got our quiz and our things to talk about and the story to read. And our song today is called Brick After Brick, which is all about how God is still building his temple and how we can be part of that temple by asking Jesus to live in our hearts. So enjoy, we'll see you next time.